Hi, I'm Sophia, and I've decided to do my presentation on the link between the psychological process of visual attention and the real world problem of dangerous driving. It's just like riding a bike, once someone learns how to drive, it feels like an automatic process. However, visual attention has a big impact on driving. I believe this is an important topic as lives are lost unnecessarily every day on the roads, and I think better understanding of the psychology behind this can help keep people safe. Dangerous driving isn't just reckless, it's often a failure of attention, and when attention fails, accidents happen. According to the government provisional figures for Great Britain, in between June 2024 and 2025, some of the current UK road danger statistics were as followed. 1,579 people died in road crashes, 5 people a day died on the UK roads, and there were 5,303 convictions of dangerous driving. A significant proportion of these crashes involved distraction, and this presentation explores exactly why and how psychological understanding of visual attention can provide useful applications to cutting these statistics down. Attention is the ability of our brain to select important visual information to attend to whilst ignoring the less relevant. We don't process everything we look at because our attention is limited. There are three types of attention: selective attention, which is focusing on one thing, for example, traffic lights; divided attention, which is focusing on multiple things, for example, the road and your phone; and sustained attention, which is staying focused for a long time, for example, long drives. Driving requires all three of these attention types, making it risky when attention is disrupted. What we attend to affects our reaction time and decision making. This is obviously important in driving, as a slightly delayed reaction time could be the difference between life and death. Ashler said that at any given moment, our awareness encompasses only a tiny proportion of the stimuli and pinging on our sensory systems. To put it simply, we notice far less than we think we do. Even though lots of things are happening around us all the time, we're only actually consciously aware of a very small number of them happening at a moment in time. We can only pay attention to so much at once due to the limited capacity of our attention. In terms of driving, we have to select important things to focus on, for example, just the colour of the traffic lights, despite being able to see buildings, trees, signs, other cars and people around us. We must actively neglect the most irrelevant information to focus better on the relevant. Posner proposed the idea of the attentional spotlight, and whatever's in this spotlight is attended to and processed. Everything outside of the spotlight is ignored. Just addressed, drivers are unable to process all visual information that's presented to them in one given moment. So the idea of this attentional spotlight that was proposed by Posner does help drivers to attend to the most relevant and significant information around them. So, for example, the colour of a traffic light or the car in front of them, and it helps them filter out irrelevant information as well. But what's important to understand here is that focusing their attention too narrowly on what's inside this spotlight could be a problem because drivers will miss important information that occurs outside of that spotlight. So, focusing too intensely on, for example, the car ahead of them, which is in their attentional spotlight, could actually lead a driver to miss a cyclist in their wing mirror because that was outside of their attentional spotlight. And obviously this results in dangerous driving and often, unfortunately, a casualty which could have been easily avoided if their attentional spotlight hadn't been focused so narrowly on what was in front of them. Posner also found that responses are faster for stimuli that is inside their attentional spotlight. So being distracted by external sources in the vehicle, like conversations with their passengers, looking down at their phone, typing into a GPS, all of that would put the driver's attentional spotlight on the wrong things, and taking obviously the road and important hazards out of the spotlight. And this raises risks of accidents, of course, and Posner stated that attention can't be in two places at once. So if they are looking down at their phone, their attention won't be like as focused on the road ahead of them, or people like pedestrians stepping out are going to be more easily missed. So therefore, if their attention is going to be misdirected, drivers should pull over and park their car, which keeps hazards in their attentional spotlight until they're no longer driving, which would be a safe time for them to then shift their attentional spotlight onto other things. Another thing Posner highlighted was that our attention narrows under stress. So There's many examples, of course, of why a driver could be stressed on the roads. So it could be bad weather, they could be in a busy area or at a confusing roundabout, or they could be lost after making a wrong turn. So this spotlight narrows under stress, and then this tunnel vision will reduce their awareness of the hazards around them. So, for example, driving in bad weather could cause a driver to miss road signs or merging vehicles, obviously increasing the likelihood of an accident. Finally, Posner highlighted the importance of covert attention, and this is relevant to driving as well, in the sense that it's the idea that attention can shift without eye movement. Obviously, this allows drivers to monitor hazards whilst keeping their eyes on the road. For example, a pedestrian stepping onto the road, they can see that whilst looking directly at the road ahead of them. They don't have to be looking at the pavement to see the pedestrian. It's helpful in driving because it means the driver isn't constantly having to move their head and eyes around to see everything, and this is beneficial for their reaction time. However, they shouldn't become too reliant on it, as it can lead to overconfidence and being too relaxed and unalert behind the wheel. So therefore, as helpful as covert attention is, becoming too reliant on it would lead to lack of attention or lower concentration on the roads, which can therefore cause accidents. This brings me on to Broadbent's filter theory, which is the idea that we have a limited attentional capacity, so we filter information early based on its physical characteristics. For example, how loud something is or how close it is to us. We do this before its meaning is processed, and any other information is held in a sensory buffer and degrades. In driving, there's many stimuli competing for the driver's attention. These stimuli can include signs, lights, engine noises, background noises, the radio, and the driver prioritizes the most physically important or noticeable information to attend to. Therefore, the less relevant stimuli filters out. If two important stimuli arrive at once, for example, a ringing phone and a pedestrian stepping off the pavement into the road, one may be filtered out. So, for example, if a driver is distracted by their ringing phone and a pedestrian steps into the road, they're more likely to miss the hazard, which could end in a disaster. St. James presented the idea that attention operates like a zoom lens, in the sense that it can focus narrowly on a small area in high detail, or it can widen its lens to cover a larger area, but in less detail and with slower processing. So the wider the attentional focus, the more information is covered, but with less efficiency it's processed. For example, approaching a large and busy roundabout in torrential rainy conditions in an area that a driver isn't familiar with, for example, would need wide attentional focus to monitor all the stimuli that's presented to them, and this would reduce processing efficiency and increase chance of missed detail, even though more is being attended to. On the other hand, hazard detection, so just reading a road sign, for example, would require a more narrow focus because there's less to process. And failing to adjust attentional zoom correctly can cause dangerous driving. For example, focusing too narrowly on their phone and missing hazards in their wider road environment. So divided attention is the concept of paying attention to two different things at the same time. And in 2015, Burgess proposed a distinction between concurrent multitasking, which is doing two things at the same time, and serial multitasking, which is switching back and forth between the tasks. And he said that true multitasking in complex tasks is a myth, and instead of actually doing things at the same time, we rapidly switch our attention between the two tasks, which causes time for delays and therefore errors, which is important in driving because it's already a complex task. It's got high cognitive demands. So when we're attempting to multitask by looking at, say, for example, the sat nav as well as the road at the same time, our attention's actually switching from one to the other, and this delays our reaction time and increases the risk of accidents. Two concepts that are strongly linked to selective visual attention, and these are change blindness and inattentional blindness, both which come with their own limitations. So change blindness involves failing to spot changes made to visual scenes, demonstrating the importance of our attention because it allows us to process information and store it in our memory, and the impact of processing capacity limitations. So we can't attend to everything at once, which is important in driving because we obviously need to choose wisely about what we do pay attention to keep people safe. Second concept is inattentional blindness, which is where we miss information due to being focused on something else, which I will get into more on the next slide. Fabry did a study into selective attention, specifically exploring the concept of inattentional blindness, whereby participants had to watch a video of people passing a basketball around, and whilst counting the number of successful basketball passes, someone dressed as a gorilla ran through the scene. And even though watching the video about this is a very noticeable event, half the participants actually failed to notice it in the video because they were so focused on something else. They were obviously too focused on watching the passes and counting them. And this is evidence that when we're focused on one thing, we can very easily miss other things. It's a great example, obviously, of inattentional blindness and explains why accidents can happen even when drivers are looking at the road. This can be used in driver training to encourage drivers to actively be scanning the road and to always expect the unexpected. And it's great evidence, again, that we don't process everything that we see. Treisman and Gallade proposed the feature integration theory, showing that visual processing actually occurs in two stages. So basic features such as something's shape, colour or movement is processed automatically and parallel to the pre-attentive stage. And then focused attention is used to bind these different features together to complete the object. In relation to driving, basic features like green light are quickly detected. However, identifying all the hazards around you, such as cyclists and pedestrians moving around, this requires more focused attention and binds features together to build the whole scene. And when attention is overloaded, so for example, if the driver's stressed or there's too much going on, feature binding may fail, which causes drivers to misidentify hazards, and this leads to dangerous driving and increases risk of accident. Well, Craven showed through the use of fMRI scanners that attention influences brain activity. The fMRI scanners showed that activity in the FFA increased when attention was directed towards faces, and activity in the parahippocampal place area increased when attention was directed towards places. He also found that corresponding area of the visual cortex becomes more active when we're focusing attention on a specific object. This shows the brain enhances processing of task-relevant information and suppresses irrelevant information. Therefore, when drivers focus on hazards well, we will process them more efficiently at a neural level. Attentional control is very important in driving. It's our ability to ignore distractions and focus our processing resources on a particular task instead of getting distracted by irrelevant stimuli. It links to the activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, so damage to this leads to poor attentional control and difficulties in neglecting distraction or irrelevant information. This could be dangerous in driving, as drivers will be more likely to miss hazards. In 2002, Crundle explored the relationship between eye movements and driving by investigating the difference in the eye movement patterns of experienced and inexperienced drivers and the effect of this on their hazard perception. Participants had to watch real scenes from drivers' point of views, whilst an eye tracking device recorded their fixation durations, number of fixations, and areas of visual search. This is where they were looking, including mirrors, pavements, and junctions. They found that experienced drivers showed a wider range of visual search. They checked their mirrors more and had shorter fixations, whereas novice drivers looked at certain things for longer and focused on the road ahead, missing more hazards from the sides, for example, cars appearing from side roads or pedestrians stepping out onto the road. And this shows experienced drivers are better at anticipating hazards due to more efficient eye movement. Considering all the theories and ideas proposed earlier in this PowerPoint, I think there's an obvious link between visual attention and the real world problem of dangerous driving, and a lot can be taken away from these theories and ideas and research, and applications can be put into place to keep people safer on the roads. For example, hazard perception training, driver assistance systems, reducing car distractions, encouraging low speeds in complex areas, reducing multitasking whilst driving, making sure that the cyclists are highly visible on the roads, and teaching novice drivers wider scanning techniques and importance of mirror checks.